Welcome to CozySideAudio, where every story pulls you deeper. If you like the thrill, the mystery, and the chase, like, share, and subscribe before the next clue disappears. CozySideAudio presents The Shifters, The Adventures of Claire. Chapter 1. Claire Prattol had a habit of showing up where she wasn't supposed to. Sometimes that meant squeezing herself into the back corner of a shop just to see how long it would take before someone noticed her. Sometimes it meant poking her nose into conversations between teachers that were none of her business. And sometimes, when she was feeling particularly reckless, it meant skipping a set of stairs entirely and reappearing at the landing just before the bell rang. Teleporting wasn't something a normal sophomore at East Westmore High School could do, of course. But Claire was no normal girl. She was a shifter. The word carried weight in Westmore County. 100 years ago, when the meteor had fallen in the heart of the continent, shards of its strange metal lodged into the land. People exposed to it developed gifts no one could explain. Superhuman, supernatural, unearthly, but not welcome. Generations later, only a tiny number of people still carried that strangeness in their blood. They were rare, whispered about, often feared. Shifters. The name stuck because of how unpredictable their abilities could be. Some could twist metal with a gesture. Others could shape flames. Some bent the air. Others bent minds. Most of them hid. Society wasn't built to celebrate them, no matter how dazzling their powers were. At East Westmore High, if you asked students what they thought of shifters, you'd get a range of answers. Dangerous, freaks, don't belong here. The government kept a few approved shifters on a leash, the kind they trotted out in news stories to show that integration was possible. The rest? They were expected to bury their powers deep or risk being hunted down. And looming over it all were the dire as a name whispered like a curse. A faceless, powerful group of shifters who had torn through cities and police forces alike. Nobody knew their identities. Nobody even knew how many there were. They were the monster in the closet, the shadows under the bed. Which meant Claire, who could teleport and open doorways in thin air, had every reason to keep her head down. She just didn't. The school hallway was jammed with kids spilling out of first period, voices bouncing like ping-pong balls off the lockers. Claire tucked a green bow into her hair that morning, and now it swayed behind her shoulder as she moved, half skipping, half walking, weaving between taller classmates with the careless confidence of someone who had never been afraid of getting caught. "Prattol," someone called. Claire glanced back. Maddie Alvarez, her best friend since last year, was speed-walking with a binder hugged to her chest. Maddie's dark curls frizzed in the humid September air, and she looked frazzled, which was her default state. "You're seriously going to be late for chem if you don't slow down," Maddie said when she caught up. "Late? Me? Nah." Claire smirked, eyes flicking toward the staircase that led to the second floor. "I've got shortcuts." Maddie gave her a look, the kind of look you give a cat just before it leaps onto a counter it's not supposed to be on. "Don't," she hissed. "Not here." Claire rolled her eyes dramatically. "I was joking." She wasn't joking. The bell was seconds away, and the hallway was a swarm. Nobody was looking at her specifically. So when she rounded the corner, Claire blinked. The world snapped, bent, and folded, and in less than an instant she was upstairs, standing in front of the classroom door, her sneakers squeaking softly on the tile. No one had seen her vanish in the crowd. No one was looking at her when she reappeared. It was fine. It was always fine. She slipped into her seat 2 seconds before the final bell rang, lips curved in a small, victorious grin. Claire's parents had raised her to understand 2 truths. 1, being a shifter meant being apart. 2, being apart didn't mean being powerless. They weren't from Westmore City originally. They came from the outer counties, where shifters were rarer still, and people whispered instead of shouting. Out there, Claire's parents had drilled her in discipline. They'd taught her the edges of her powers before she was even in middle school. By the time they moved to Westmore, she could teleport across a football field without breaking a sweat. She could summon a shimmering oval of energy in midair and step through it as if walking through a door. She had precision, speed, and the confidence to match. Most shifters her age, if there even were any, were stumbling around with half-baked control. Claire was different. She had mastery. She also had boredom, which was why she used her gifts when she didn't need to. A portal to grab a pencil she left in her locker, a teleportation to sneak onto the roof during lunch, a quick blink into the back of a store to eavesdrop on a deal she wasn't supposed to hear. Reckless? Maybe. Fun? Definitely. She wasn't trying to be a hero. She wasn't trying to save the world. She just wanted to live in it. And if that meant bending the rules of space every once in a while, who was it really hurting? It was after school that she got into trouble. Westmore City wasn't glamorous. It was crowded and industrial, with neighborhoods stitched together by train lines and flickering street lamps. Claire liked wandering after class, sneakers scuffing the cracked sidewalks, eyes wide with curiosity. Maddie thought she was crazy for walking alone. Claire thought Maddie was boring. That afternoon, she found herself near the edge of Westmore Square, where the nicer shops gave way to the forgotten corners. A pair of guys were standing at the mouth of an alley, both in their 20s, both jittery, voices sharp. Claire tilted her head and wandered closer, pretending to fiddle with her phone. "I told you it's double now," one of them hissed. "Double? That wasn't the deal." The taller one shoved the other into the brick wall. Something metallic clattered to the ground, a crowbar. Claire's eyes narrowed. It wasn't her business. She knew it wasn't. But her feet carried her forward anyway, because when something smelled like trouble, Claire Prattol always wanted to stick her nose in it. The taller guy glanced up, noticed her hovering. "What are you looking at, kid?" Claire blinked, her freckles catching the streetlight glow. "Just wondering if you're planning to hit him with that or if it's more of a decorative piece." His face twisted. He lunged. Claire moved faster. The air folded snap and she wasn't there anymore. She was behind him, foot out, tripping him as he stumbled. He sprawled onto the pavement, stunned. The other guy scrambled away, cursing under his breath. For a heartbeat, Claire thought about pushing it. Maybe drop him through a portal just to scare him. But her gut said no. She wasn't here to play judge or executioner. "Maybe get a new hobby," she said. And in the next instant, she was gone. The alley empty except for the dumbfounded man rubbing his scraped elbow. Back home that night, Claire sprawled on her bed, staring at the ceiling. There was a thrill to it. To using her powers in little bursts, to reminding herself she wasn't ordinary. But there was also a shadow that trailed her thoughts, the one whispered about in every household. The Dyers. Nobody knew who they were. Nobody wanted to. They were the dark reflection of what she was, proof of why people feared shifters in the first place. Her parents had warned her never to tangle with anything connected to them. And Claire wasn't stupid. She wouldn't. But as she closed her eyes, replaying the way the alley had lit up when she blinked out of one spot and into another, she couldn't help but grin. Whatever part 1 of her story was, it wasn't going to be boring. Chapter 2. Claire Prattol's Monday morning started with a portal. Not a big one. Just a neat oval ripple opening in midair at the foot of her bed. She yawned, reached through it, and snatched the hoodie she'd left hanging on the chair across the room. Her mom's voice carried up the stairs. "Claire, don't be late." "I'm never late," she muttered, tugging the hoodie on. It was true. Or at least it was technically true. The trick to never being late was that you just weren't in the same place long enough for lateness to count. A blink here, a doorway there, and you could dodge time like it was an obstacle course. She bounded downstairs 2 steps at a time, grabbing a slice of toast with one hand and an apple with the other. Her dad looked up from the kitchen table where he was reading the paper, hair still damp from his morning shower. "You could walk to school like a normal kid?" he said. Claire flashed him a grin. "I'm not normal." He sighed, though there was a smile tucked into the corners of his mouth. Her parents worried, of course they did. Being shifters meant living with one foot in shadow, one eye over your shoulder. But they also trusted her more than most 15-year-olds probably deserved. She'd trained hard, mastered what she could. They had raised her on the edge of the city before moving here, where shifters were rarer still. Out there, the world was slower, quieter. She'd had room to practice without eyes everywhere. By the time they came to Westmore, her abilities weren't clumsy or accidental. They were sharp, deliberate. She finished her toast in 3 bites, tossed the apple in the air, and caught it in a portal that reappeared above her backpack. The fruit dropped neatly inside. "Show off," her mom muttered. Claire only grinned wider. The hallways of East Westmore High School were a jungle at 8 a.m. Lockers slammed, sneakers squeaked, voices collided. Claire wove through it all like a salmon swimming upstream. Maddie Alvarez was already waiting by the second-floor railing, waving both arms like she was stranded at sea. "You disappeared on me yesterday," Maddie accused the moment Claire reached her. Claire blinked innocently. "Did I?" "Yes, 1 second you were in the hall, the next, poof, gone. You do this to me every week. You're either the fastest sprinter I know or—" Maddie cut herself off, narrowing her eyes. "No, never mind." Claire fought the urge to smirk. Maddie didn't know. Nobody knew. And that was how it had to stay. "Relax," Claire said, slinging an arm around Maddie's shoulders. "You worry too much." "I worry exactly the right amount, thanks." By lunch, Claire was restless. The cafeteria smelled like stale fries, the chatter was deafening, and her math test sat in her bag like a brick. She needed air. She needed something. Which was how she ended up slipping out the side door and onto the back stairwell, balancing on the railing while chewing her apple. She loved watching the city stretch out beyond the school. Westmore wasn't pretty, not like the cities in movies. Its skyline was uneven, jagged with old smokestacks and half-finished glass towers. But it was alive. Below, a commotion caught her ear. 2 guys in delivery uniforms were arguing by the loading dock. Nothing unusual about that, until one of them lifted his hand and a ripple of heat shimmered in the air. Claire froze, eyes narrowing. A shifter. Not just any shifter either. Heat like that meant something volatile. Fire, maybe. The other guy shoved back, muttering sharp words she couldn't catch. Claire knew she should turn around. Walk away. This wasn't her business. But her heart was already thumping. Her curiosity always won. She leaned forward too far. Her sneaker slipped off the rail. "Crap," she hissed, and in the half-second before gravity did its work, she blinked. The world folded, and suddenly she was crouched on the other side of the stairwell, hidden behind the brick wall. The delivery men didn't notice. The fiery one muttered something else, flicked his wrist, and a spark leapt between his fingers. Claire chewed her lip. She wasn't a hero. She wasn't supposed to interfere. But if he torched someone in broad daylight, it wouldn't just be his neck on the line. It'd make life harder for all shifters trying to keep their heads down. So she did the dumb thing. A portal shimmered open behind the man's ankles. With the gentlest push of air she could manage, she nudged his foot back into it. The man stumbled, yelping, as his own leg reappeared on the other side of the dock. He toppled forward, sprawling on the ground. The spark fizzled. His partner stared, wide-eyed, then bolted. Claire shut the portal with a snap, grinning to herself. Clean, no evidence. Nobody saw her. She leaned back against the wall, adrenaline buzzing. Reckless? Definitely. Worth it? Absolutely. That evening, she sprawled on Maddie's floor, textbooks open but ignored. "Do you ever think about them?" Maddie asked suddenly. Claire raised a brow. "Them who?" "The Dyers." Claire forced a laugh. "What, like bedtime stories?" "I'm serious." Maddie hugged a pillow to her chest. "My cousin swears one of them came through Southside last year. Whole street was leveled. Cops wouldn't say anything, but—" She shivered. "They scare me." Claire stared at the ceiling. The Dyers scared everyone. No names, no faces, just shadows of power. People said they could melt steel, shatter buildings, vanish whole squads of officers. Whether any of it was true, nobody knew. That was what made them terrifying. "I don't think about them," Claire lied. On her way home, she cut through the old rail yard, sneakers crunching gravel. The sky was streaked pink, the air smelling faintly of rust. A sound pricked her ears, not the usual hum of the city, but a sharp, metallic screech. She turned a corner and froze. A boy, maybe a year older than her, stood with both hands outstretched. The air around him shimmered strangely. The stack of abandoned rail tracks at his feet wasn't just lying there anymore. It was bending, groaning, curling like taffy. Another shifter. Claire's pulse jumped. She hadn't meant to find another one today. She hadn't meant to stumble into this at all, but here she was, nose first, curiosity burning. The boy's head whipped toward her. His eyes glowed faintly, silver in the fading light. Claire swallowed. She could teleport away in an instant. She could pretend she'd never seen him. Or she could stay. She grinned just a little. Nice trick. The metal screeched louder. The boy's lips twisted into a smile that wasn't friendly. Chapter 3. The first thing Claire noticed about the boy was his grin. Not the kind of grin that said hello, nice to meet you, but the kind that said you just walked into my trap. The second thing she noticed was the way the rail tracks behind him twisted like snakes, bending and writhing in midair with a groan of tortured steel. Claire had seen shifters before, but never one quite like this. The boy tilted his head. His silver-lit eyes reflected the setting sun. You shouldn't be here. Yeah, Claire said, rocking back on her heels. People tell me that a lot. The boy's hand twitched, and the stack of rails lurched upright as though yanked by invisible strings. Metal screeched, the sound knifed into Claire's ears, sharp enough to make her wince. Okay, she thought. Time to play smart. He flung a length of steel toward her like a spear. Claire blinked gone from where she was and reappeared 3 feet to the left. The spear tore into the gravel where she had been standing, sending a spray of rocks across the yard. Teleporting? His grin widened. Cute. Claire's nose wrinkled. Better than throwing a tantrum with scrap metal. The boy snapped his fingers. 6 bars of steel rose at once. Claire's eyes darted. Too many to dodge one by one. So she bent the air. A shimmering oval opened before her, a portal, glossy and thin like glass. The first bar shot through it and spat out the other side, slamming harmlessly into the gravel 10 yards away. The second followed, then the third. Claire shut the portal with a snap and smirked. The boy's grin faded just slightly. So you're not just blinking around. You open doors. Something like that. She tilted her head. Your turn? The rail tracks rose higher, curling like snakes preparing to strike. Claire's heart thudded. She loved this part the moment before a fight really began, when her brain sparked with possibilities. She wasn't a hero. She wasn't a vigilante. But she loved testing herself against someone else's strength. The boy flung both hands outward. The rails snapped forward like whips. Claire vanished, reappeared behind him. Boo, she said. He spun, metal screeching into a wall around him like a cocoon. Claire's fist met steel, sparks ringing against her knuckles. She yelped and pulled back, shaking her hand. Okay, she muttered, not playing fair. The boy pushed his palms outward, and the cocoon exploded into shrapnel. Claire ducked, blinked, and reappeared 10 feet above, standing on nothing. Another portal had opened beneath her feet like a platform. She grinned, balanced, then dove off. Catch me if you can, she shouted. The fight spilled across the rail yard. Metal bent and snapped like living creatures, while Claire flickered in and out of sight, weaving through portals, dodging, taunting. She wasn't trying to hurt him. Not really. But she was testing him. He was stronger than the fire shifter she'd tangled with earlier. Smarter, too. His control over the steel was sharp, like he'd been practicing for years. Claire, though, had precision. When he tried to pin her with a collapsing cage of rails, she cut a portal through it and stepped neatly out. When he hurled a steel beam like a javelin, she caught it in one portal and spat it back through another, forcing him to dive aside. You fight like you don't care who wins, he growled. Claire landed lightly on her feet, hair whipping around her bow. Who says I do? She blinked again just as a chunk of track smashed into the space she'd been standing. Sweat prickled at the back of her neck. Okay, maybe she cared a little about winning, or at least about not losing. Because losing meant getting crushed under a ton of steel, and she wasn't in the mood for that. The boy's silver glow eyes narrowed. What's your name? Claire hesitated. Then she flashed a grin. Why, planning to ask me out after this? He scowled. Planning to remember who I buried. Oof, dark. Claire teleported again, popping up on top of a rail stack. I don't kill people for the record. It's kind of a rule. Then you'll lose. The rails shrieked upward all at once, a wall of jagged metal closing in. Claire's stomach lurched. She flicked open two portals, one in front of her and one behind, creating a loop. She dove through, momentum carrying her out the back, reappearing behind him. For a split second, she thought she had him. But the boy slammed his fist down and the ground itself shuddered. The tracks beneath her twisted like snakes, snapping up around her ankles. "Got you," he hissed. Claire yelped, tugging, but the steel tightened like cuffs. Okay, this was bad. But Claire Prattol wasn't the type to panic. She breathed once, then opened a portal beneath her feet. The steel tightened, then dropped through the hole. Claire vanished with it, reappearing 3 yards away, rolling across the gravel and springing to her feet. "Almost," she called, brushing dust off her hoodie. The boy's jaw clenched. His silver-lit eyes blazed brighter. Claire's grin widened. She could feel it, the battle stretching, deepening. This wasn't going to be over quickly, and she liked that. The rail yard echoed with screeching steel and the shimmer of tearing space. Neither one of them was backing down. And for the first time, Claire Prattol realized she might have found someone who could actually keep up with her. Chapter 4. Claire leaned back in her desk chair, staring at the ceiling tiles as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. History was always her least favorite class, mostly because Mr. Salazar had the charisma of a wet paper towel. His voice droned on about city legislation, dates of reform, and the kind of legal battles that made her want to peel her ears off. Still, the mention of shifter regulations pricked her attention. She shifted in her seat, lowering her pencil as her ears sharpened on instinct. And after the Consolidation Accord, Mr. Salazar was saying, the government established permitted categories of shifter activity: combat services, defense contracts, surveillance units, but only for registered shifters under approved guilds. Unauthorized use of shifting remains punishable by law. A hand shot up from the back. So, like, the dyers are illegal? The class snickered, but Mr. Salazar didn't smile. The dyers are something else entirely. Unregistered, untraceable, ungoverned. Dangerous if the reports are true. Their anonymity is what frightens people most. You can't fight what you don't understand. Claire tapped her eraser against the desk, forcing her expression to stay neutral. She hated the way teachers and officials always spoke like they knew the dyers, when really nobody did. Rumors stacked like cards in the city, but facts? Thin as paper. She would bet half of them weren't even true shifters. But one thing always came up. Power. The dyers weren't just skilled, they were untouchable. Her hand twitched, the temptation rising to shift right there under the desk. She could vanish, blink out of the class for 5 minutes, grab a snack, and teleport back before anyone noticed. Reckless? Definitely, but so satisfying. She managed to resist. Barely. When the bell finally rang, she all but leapt from her seat. Outside in the hall, the chaos of students moving like a flood almost made her grin. The mundane flow of normal life was something she'd learned to enjoy, because she was anything but normal. That evening, she roamed downtown, hoodie pulled up, hands jammed in the pockets. Claire didn't need a reason to wander. The city was alive in ways the countryside never was, and she liked sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Her wandering brought her into a narrow alley where 2 men stood near a dumpster, voices sharp. She leaned against the brick wall at the corner, pretending to scroll her phone. "Told you, the cut's mine," one of them snapped. "You didn't even do the work," the other hissed back. "I'm the one who got us through the system." Claire rolled her eyes. Small-time criminals, the kind of scum who thought skimming IDs and stealing credits made them clever. She could walk away. Should walk away. Instead, a mischievous grin curved her lips. In a blink, her body shimmered and she shifted, her skin blending into the brickwork until she was invisible. She teleported in silence, reappearing just behind them. "Boo," she whispered. The first man yelped, stumbling back into the dumpster. The second cursed, spinning around, but all he saw was empty air. She'd already teleported back to the street corner, leaning casually on the wall again, smirking at her phone. They bolted down the alley, swearing at ghosts. Claire laughed under her breath. Not heroic exactly, but the city didn't need more crimes festering in its alleys. A little chaos for the bad guys, balance restored in her own way. Her nights often ended like this, a mix of boredom, mischief, and the intoxicating rush of being untouchable. But tonight wasn't finished. She caught a shadow out of the corner of her eye, a shimmer, faint but deliberate. She froze, every muscle tense. That wasn't her imagination. A shifter. The figure stepped into the light at the far end of the street, tall, lean, posture confident. His eyes glowed faintly, an aura of shifting energy curling around his hands. Strong. Much stronger than the criminals she'd just spooked. Claire's grin faltered, but she didn't panic. She knew the game. "Showtime," she whispered, pulse quickening as she braced herself. The fight wouldn't end tonight. Chapter 5. The alley smelled of rust, garbage, and tension. Claire's sneakers pressed against cracked pavement as she circled, eyes locked on the silver-lit shifter at the far end. He moved like he owned the shadows, metal bending and curling around him with every subtle motion. He wasn't fast in the traditional sense, but every flick of his wrist made the terrain itself a weapon. Claire grinned. "You're organized. I like that. Makes the game fun." He frowned. "You shouldn't be here. Why do you follow?" "I'm curious," Claire said. "Curiosity's my thing." The boy's eyes narrowed. "Curiosity will get you hurt." Claire's pulse quickened, but she didn't move forward. Not yet. This was the moment before a fight, the moment when your mind raced through possibilities. She flicked her wrist subtly. A portal shimmered open at her side, just behind her. If things went sideways, she'd vanish through it instantly. The boy's hand arced toward the stack of bent rails. With a metallic screech, they surged toward her like serpents. Claire blinked. Teleportation. She vanished from the path of the first wave, reappearing to the left. She used the portal under her feet to spring upward, landing on top of a pile of broken crates. Sparks flew where rails collided with concrete behind her. "Not bad," she muttered, "but predictable." The boy smirked faintly, shifting his stance. The rails began to twist faster, coiling into sharp angles, forming a barrier around him. Claire could see his strategy. Funnel her, limit her movement, force a mistake. She let out a soft whistle. I love it when they play the game my way. Another blink, another portal. She was now behind him, flipping backward off a dumpster lid to land silently. One of the steel rails snapped toward her midair. She bent it aside with a swipe of her hand, sending it through a small portal she had opened in the wall beside her. It clattered to the alley behind him. Harmless. The boy's eyes widened briefly. Then he laughed. A low, amused sound. Clever. Claire's grin widened. She bounced on the balls of her feet, teleporting, ducking, weaving around steel and debris. Every move she made was calculated. Every blink had a purpose. Yet there was a thrill in seeing his anger flare, watching him try to anticipate her next move. "You fight differently," he admitted between swings. "I don't fight if I can't do it my way," Claire said. "Otherwise, it's boring." He narrowed his eyes, flaring his powers. The rails snapped upward, spiraling in a tornado of metal. Claire's heart raced. Even with her portals and teleportation, one misstep could pin her. Her mind spun. Options, angles, escape routes. There was one, a narrow corridor between a brick wall and a dumpster. Dangerous, but doable. She flicked her wrist. A portal shimmered into existence on the far side of the corridor. With a running blink, she darted through the space, disappearing just as the tornado of steel crashed into the area she had been standing. Sparks flew like fireworks, the sound deafening. Claire reappeared at the corridor's end, chest heaving, hair sticking to her forehead. She grinned despite herself. Close call. The boy's aura flared. He wasn't done. He stepped forward, sweeping his hands in a motion that made steel rise like a wall of snakes. Claire's smile widened. This was exactly the kind of challenge she lived for. She opened a portal beneath her feet and leapt through it, landing on the fire escape above. The boy swung a bent rail upward, scraping the brick just below her feet. She teleported again, landing atop a dumpster across the alley. "You're good," he said. "Not many move like that." "Flattery will get you nowhere," Claire called back, blinking to the side. Her portal popped open at a diagonal angle, giving her another escape route if the fight escalated. The alley was alive with metal bending and snapping, Claire's laughter, and the occasional sharp exhale from her opponent. She wasn't holding back. Not completely. But she wasn't trying to kill him either. That wasn't her style. She wanted to test, to learn, to play. Minutes passed, or maybe it was half an hour. Time bent differently when you were dodging steel, blinking through portals and leaping through air. At one point, the boy sent a railing spinning like a drill, aimed to strike her midair. Claire twisted sideways, opening a portal above it. The steel vanished into the opening, reappearing with a clatter against the far wall. Okay, she muttered to herself. That was close. The boy's grin returned. You enjoy this too much. I enjoy winning, Claire said, and right now I'm enjoying not losing. He laughed, a metallic ringing to it. We'll see. Claire's eyes flicked around, scanning the alley. Trash bins, crates, stairwells, poles. Every object was a potential platform or a portal anchor. She could bend the battlefield to her style or she wouldn't play. That was her rule. Another swing of his hands, and the steel surged toward her faster, sharper, more unpredictable. Claire's grin sharpened. She leapt, blinked, portal, dive. The fight had escalated, and she was beginning to realize something she hadn't yet faced. This shifter might be too strong to beat head-on. And that excited her almost as much as it terrified her. She flicked open a portal beneath the ground, disappeared into the shadows, and reappeared behind a stack of crates, catching her breath. The alley was quiet for a heartbeat. Then a single piece of steel arced upward, slicing the air where she had been standing. She blinked again, landing on the fire escape. Her heart raced, hair whipping around her green bow. This was going to take everything she had, and maybe more. Claire smiled, because she loved it. Chapter 6. Claire's pulse drummed in her ears like a low warning bell. She crouched on the top of a rusted fire escape, staring down at the alley below. The boy's silver-lit eyes were sharp, alert, and calculating. Every piece of steel in the area bent toward him as though he were commanding a metal orchestra. Her grin was faint, cautious, but still there. This was fun. This was thrilling, but she knew she couldn't just dart and weave forever. The longer this went on, the more mistakes she risked making. Why do you fight like that? He called, the sound echoing off the alley walls. Teleporting, portals, dancing around like it's a game? Because it is a game, Claire replied, hopping lightly from one piece of rusted railing to another. And I play it my way. Then don't get cornered, he said. Claire laughed softly. Cornered? Cute? The boy surged forward, raising a coil of steel that looked like a jagged whip. Claire teleported, blinked, to the side, then flipped through a portal she had placed on the wall beside her. The steel whipped past, clanging against the brick with a shower of sparks. Her mind raced. He wasn't just powerful. He was strategic. Every wave of metal seemed designed to hurt her, limit her escape, test her reflexes. If she stayed on the defensive too long, she could get trapped. Claire's fingers twitched. Time for a new tactic. She stepped into another portal she had opened on the ground. When she reappeared above him, she flicked her hand toward a stack of abandoned crates. One piece of metal she had redirected earlier shot through the portal, smacking him in the shoulder with a sharp clang. Hey, he shouted, staggering backward. Claire grinned. Just reminding you I can play too. The fight became a blur of movement. Portals flicked open and closed in rapid succession. Steel bent, twisted, and flew unpredictably. Claire leapt, twisted, vanished, and reappeared with surgical precision. But she felt it, the limits creeping in. Her body was burning with adrenaline, each teleport and portal opening taking more energy than the last. Her eyes scanned every inch of the alley for potential anchors, escape routes, anything she could manipulate to maintain the edge. The boy's silver-lit gaze sharpened. He noticed her hesitation. The steel surged around her like a cage of snakes, tightening. Claire blinked through a portal, rolling on impact as a rail snapped near her feet. Sparks flew. She gritted her teeth. This wasn't play anymore. Claire leapt to the top of a dumpster, fingertips brushing the rim. She opened a portal above herself and disappeared into thin air. She reappeared on the fire escape 3 stories up, breathing hard, sweat sticking her brown hair to her forehead. The boy's grin was gone now. His stance was rigid, precise, every gesture deliberate. Claire realized he had adapted to her pattern. He wasn't just reacting, he was predicting. Time to change the rules. She darted to the side, opening a series of small portals along the walls of the alley, creating a lattice of movement. For the next several seconds, she was everywhere and nowhere, teleporting through one portal, stepping through another, redirecting steel, pushing and pulling her environment like a chessboard. The boy's silver eyes narrowed. "I underestimated you," he said. "Impressive, but you can't keep this up forever." Claire smirked despite herself. "Neither can you. But that's the fun, isn't it?" A loud clang echoed as a thick steel beam flew toward her. She blinked. Portal. Portal, a quick sidestep. The beam struck the wall behind her, rattling bricks. Her grin faltered just a little. That was close. The boy moved with a sudden burst of speed, steel spiraling into a tornado-like formation around him. Claire's breath caught. She had underestimated the ferocity of his attacks when he decided to go all out. Her mind raced. Portals weren't enough alone. She needed to outthink him. She darted behind a stack of crates and peeked out, calculating angles. Then she did something daring. She jumped straight at him, blinked, and disappeared into a portal she had placed earlier directly above his head. When she reappeared, she kicked a bent rail she had redirected earlier straight at him. The boy barely dodged, spinning on his heel to retaliate. Claire tumbled backward, opening another portal beneath her feet as a steel rod struck the dumpster she had just vacated. She grinned wildly, exhilarated. This was no longer a playful spar. It was a battle of wits, reflexes, and sheer creativity. They clashed, rail against her portals, steel bending around her teleportation, each move more precise and desperate than the last. Claire realized something important. She could outthink him, but she couldn't match his raw strength head-on. The alley echoed with the sound of clashing metal and the faint humming of portals. Sparks flew like fireworks, reflecting in Claire's greenish-blue eyes. Her heart raced. Her body screamed with exertion. And yet, she was smiling. Because this was exactly the kind of challenge she lived for. She could feel it, though. She was approaching her limit. Every blink, every portal, every twist in the air demanded more focus than she could safely maintain. One mistake and she'd give him the upper hand. The boy smirked faintly. "End of the line," he said. Claire's grin widened. Not even close. She dashed toward a narrow gap between 2 buildings, steel slicing past her like whips. She opened a portal at the far end and disappeared. But when she reappeared, the boy was waiting, rail poised like a strike. This time, she realized, the fight was no longer just a game. It was a real test. And she had to be smarter than she ever had before. Chapter 7. Claire landed on the fire escape, chest heaving. Her hair stuck to her forehead, bow crooked, and adrenaline coursing like a live wire through her veins. The alley below was a chaotic mess of twisted steel, scattered debris, and the faint glimmer of residual energy from the boy's shifting powers. He watched her, calm but dangerous, silver-lit eyes scanning every corner of her position. He had stopped the wild, erratic attacks for now. He was observing, learning, waiting. Claire exhaled slowly. She had danced, dodged, redirected, and blinked through portals countless times, but each move drained her more than the last. Her muscles burned, her mind raced, calculating trajectories, anticipating attacks, and balancing portals against teleportation. She smirked faintly. "Okay," she muttered under her breath. "Time to change the rules." The boy's hands moved subtly, and metal rose in spiraling towers around him. This was no longer just a test. It was an ambush. Claire blinked sideways, portal under her feet, springing to a nearby rooftop to gain vertical advantage. "Impressive," he called up, voice echoing. "But how long can you keep it up?" "Long enough," Claire replied, fingertips grazing the ledge as she balanced. "Long enough to teach you something." She began opening multiple small portals in the alley below, placing them in a lattice-like pattern between walls, crates, and lampposts. Each portal served as a trap and an escape route. She was creating a loop, forcing him to commit or overextend. The boy's smile faded slightly. He shot a steel beam through one of her portals. Claire blinked midair, escaping through a second portal and flipping onto the rooftop edge. Sparks flew. She felt it. The limits creeping, her body burning from repeated teleportation and portal creation. But she had to keep the rhythm. "Not bad," he said aloud. "Not bad at all." Claire grinned despite the exhaustion. "Thanks, I try." Then she noticed something, a subtle pattern in his movement. He wasn't improvising. He was reacting in loops, repeating sequences. Her smile widened. That was her advantage. She could predict the rhythm. She could bend the game to her style. With a quick flick of her wrist, she sent a thin piece of twisted metal spinning through a portal at an angle behind him. The boy twisted, barely deflecting it with a coil of steel. The distraction was enough. Claire teleported directly above him. "Time to change the game," she whispered. She dove, portals flipping under her hands and feet, twisting the battlefield like origami. Every steel bar he sent, she redirected. Every swing, she dodged. Every trap, she inverted. The alley became a blur of movement, sparks, metal, and shimmering portals. The boy grunted, frustration flashing in his silver eyes. "You're persistent." "You're strong," Claire admitted, "but I'm smarter." She landed lightly on a crate, hair whipping around her green bow. Her heart raced, sweat dripping down her temples. The fight had become a test of endurance, strategy, and mental agility. Each blink, each portal, each dodge required focus and precise timing. One misstep, and she could get pinned. She darted sideways, portal opening beneath the boy. A sharp steel rod shot through it, grazing his shoulder. He staggered. Claire grinned. "See? Play it my way, or don't play at all." For a moment, the alley was quiet. Sparks fizzled, dust settled. Claire crouched, portals humming faintly around her. The boy's eyes met hers. "You're good," he admitted, "but strength isn't everything." Claire smiled faintly. "Neither is brute force." Then he surged, launching a whirlwind of steel with unnatural speed. Claire blinked, teleporting, but some of the metal caught her jacket. Sparks sprayed across the alley, and she realized she was reaching the edge of her limits. Her body ached, and her mind screamed for rest. She stumbled backward, landing on the dumpster rim, breathing heavily. This wasn't just a game anymore. Claire's grin didn't fade. She loved testing herself, loved the thrill, loved the dance of portals, steel, and teleportation. But now she understood something essential. She couldn't win by reflex alone. It was time to change her approach, outthink him, manipulate him, and set the stage for the next move. Because the fight wasn't over, not even close. And Claire Prattol had no intention of giving up. Chapter 8. Claire crouched atop the dumpster, eyes flicking over the chaotic alley. Steel bars arced, bent, and snapped in a whirlwind around the boy. But she had begun noticing patterns. Tiny pauses between movements, habitual ways he redirected metal. Her grin was faint, cautious, but still there. This was it. The moment she could shift from reacting to controlling. "You're predictable," she muttered under her breath, twirling a portal open at ankle height. The boy's silver-lit eyes narrowed. "You're getting confident. Too confident." "Confidence is half the fun," Claire replied, hopping onto the fire escape railing. She blinked. Teleportation first, portal second. She leapt above a bending steel rod, vanishing midair. A portal shimmered open behind him. Claire reappeared there, flicking her hand. A thin bar shot through it, hitting his side, and he staggered. His jaw clenched. "Clever," Claire grinned. "You have no idea." She darted sideways, opening multiple small portals, creating a lattice. Steel bars flew through some portals, ricocheted off walls, and returned to confuse him. Claire used her teleportation to appear at various angles, striking, teasing, dodging. Every move forced him to react, disrupting his rhythm. For a moment, the alley was a blur of sparks, twisting steel and shimmering portals. Claire landed atop a pile of crates, hair sticking to her forehead. She scanned for anchors, walls, bins, lampposts, anything she could manipulate to keep him off balance. Then she spotted it. a set of narrow gaps along the side wall, perfect for funneling his attacks. She grinned. Claire dashed, portals opening beneath her feet, reappearing in the gaps. She flicked her hand, sending pieces of steel spinning through the portals. The boy lunged, but the bars came at him from angles he hadn't anticipated. He twisted, blocked, but stumbled slightly. "Finally," Claire whispered. "The game's mine." The boy scowled, summoning a wave of metal in response. Claire blinked, teleporting out of the first arc, but the pressure was mounting. Sweat stung her eyes, her muscles ached from repeated leaps and portal openings. She gritted her teeth. A loud clang rang as a thick beam shot past her, narrowly missing her shoulder. She ducked, portal under her hands, flipping through midair to land atop a fire escape ledge. Her greenish-blue eyes scanned the boy. He was strong, adaptive, dangerous, but she could predict him now. She smiled faintly. Time for the finale. Claire began chaining portals in rapid succession, creating a complex network across the alley. Steel bars hurled at her were redirected, spiraled, and returned, confusing the boy. Her teleportation allowed her to strike at angles he couldn't anticipate, each attack forcing him to overextend and miscalculate. "Stop moving," he shouted, frustration cracking his voice. "Stop teleporting, stop." "Or what?" Claire called back. "You'll try to catch me? Good luck." The boy's aura flared, metal bending violently. Claire's pulse raced. She blinked. Portal, leap. Steel hit the wall behind her. Another portal. Reappear. Kick a twisted bar at his midsection. He stumbled. "Not bad," he admitted. Claire's grin widened. She had him. Almost. The lattice of portals forced him into mistakes, slowed his attacks, and opened opportunities. She just needed one more move to gain the upper hand. She blinked behind him, landing lightly on a railing. The alley below twisted with shadows of steel and sparks. One misstep could cost her, but she calculated angles, velocity, and timing with near-perfect precision. Then she did it. A final sequence. Portal under his left foot, portal above his right hand, sending a bent beam spinning into his side, another through a portal above his head to distract, then a swift teleport behind him, kick aimed at the weak spot between his metal defenses. The boy staggered, balance faltering. Claire felt a rush of exhilaration. She had done it, momentarily at least. He fell back, panting, silver-lit eyes wide but not defeated. "Impressive. You've adapted faster than I expected." Claire adjusted her hair, bow crooked, chest heaving. "Told you," she said. "Play it my way or don't play at all." The alley was quiet for a heartbeat. Sparks flickered, twisted metal lay scattered, and Claire's portals hummed faintly. She had gained the advantage, but the boy's aura remained dangerous. This fight wasn't over. Not really. But Claire Prattol had proven something to herself. She could think, adapt, and outmaneuver a stronger shifter if she played her style. Chapter 9. Claire landed hard on the rooftop, chest heaving, boots clanging against rusted metal. Sparks from the alley below still floated faintly in the air, remnants of the twisting steel that had almost pinned her. Her greenish-blue eyes scanned the cityscape, pulse pounding with adrenaline and delight. She couldn't stop smiling. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was a game of endurance, strategy, and creativity. And Claire Prattol loved games. The boy was waiting, his posture relaxed but dangerous, steel bending and spiraling around him like an extension of his own body. Silver light shimmered in his eyes, and he made no move. Yet, Claire knew better than to rush. He was observing, adapting. Every blink, every portal, every move she made had to be calculated with precision. "You're holding back," he said, voice low. "I can see it." "Maybe," Claire said, hair plastered to her forehead, chest heaving. "Or maybe I'm just making you tired." A flick of her wrist, and a portal shimmered open beneath a loose fire escape ladder. She leapt, vanished midair, and reappeared on a nearby balcony. Sparks hissed where a steel rod she had redirected missed its mark. Claire's mind raced. She was exhausted, muscles screaming from repeated teleportation, her fingers aching from manipulating portals, but she refused to stop. She couldn't. not when the thrill of testing herself against someone this powerful was coursing through her veins. She flicked her gaze over the alley. Trash bins, fire escapes, stacked crates. Every object became an anchor for her portals, every corner a potential escape or attack angle. The boy flexed his fingers, and the steel rose like a storm. Claire's grin widened. She opened a portal just above the metal surge, sending a few rods tumbling harmlessly into the sky. Another portal beneath her feet launched her into a diagonal flip across the rooftops. She landed lightly, crouched, and spun to face him. "You really think you can win?" he called. "I don't think," Claire said. "I know." The fight escalated further. Every portal she opened became more daring, her teleportation faster, riskier, each move a gamble against her exhaustion. A piece of steel twisted toward her midair, and she vanished, reappearing on a narrow ledge above him. From there, she flicked a portal beneath the twisted rail, sending it spiraling toward his midsection. He blocked, steel clanging against steel. Claire blinked again, appearing behind him, ducking as another piece of metal shot past where she had just been. She was laughing now, breathless, exhilarated. She loved the challenge, loved the dance of portals, the rush of teleportation, the precision of her attacks. But she felt it. The creeping limits. A particularly long, jagged steel rod snapped toward her midair. She blinked, but misjudged the timing. Sparks sprayed as the rod grazed her shoulder, ripping her hoodie. She yelped, teleporting again, and landed on a balcony railing, sliding down to the ground. Her grin faltered for just a moment. She had almost been caught. The boy's eyes were sharp, silver-lit. "Even you have limits." Claire's fingers twitched. She ignored the ache in her muscles. She knew she had limits, but she also knew she could outthink him if she stayed sharp. She opened a network of portals, looping and connecting the rooftops and alley in a lattice of space, allowing her to move unpredictably, striking from impossible angles. Every jump, every blink, every portal she opened was precise, but more taxing than ever. He countered with a massive surge of steel. The alley became a storm, rods, rails, and shards flying unpredictably. Claire darted through a portal just as a jagged beam nearly sliced through the wall behind her. Another portal, another blink. Sparks hissed where steel collided with her redirected attacks. The boy grunted. Clever, but desperate. Claire's grin returned, sharper than before. Desperate is my specialty. She flipped through a portal, landing on the edge of a rooftop. Steel twisted around her, but she flicked a small piece through a portal aimed at his legs. He twisted, stumbled, and for the first time, she saw a slight falter in his balance. Claire felt the surge of possibility. She could finally gain the upper hand, but she had to be careful. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the metal storm would crush her. She darted into a series of rapid portals, teleporting between rooftops and alley corners. Each move forced him to commit to attacks, bending and redirecting steel like a puzzle she was solving in real time. Her body screamed with fatigue, but her mind was sharp, calculating trajectories, angles, escape paths, and attack openings. She blinked above him, just as he lashed out with a spiral of steel. A portal beneath her feet sent her soaring over his head. Another flick of her hand, and a twisted rod ricocheted through a portal, grazing his shoulder. He faltered just slightly, and Claire's grin widened. Finally, she thought. I've got him where I want him. The alley echoed with sparks and twisted steel. Dust and debris swirled in the air, illuminated by the faint glow of portals. Claire crouched on a rooftop ledge, chest heaving, greenish-blue eyes gleaming. She realized something essential. This wasn't just about reflexes anymore. It was about thinking, predicting, and manipulating the battlefield like a game board. And she had learned the rules. The boy's silver-lit eyes met hers. He straightened, raising his arms for another wave of metal. But Claire didn't flinch. She had a plan. This fight was far from over, but she was ready to push it to the limit. Chapter 10. Claire crouched on the edge of a rooftop, sweat running down her face, muscles screaming from exhaustion. The city below was a chaotic maze of twisted metal, overturned trash bins, and the faint glimmer of residual energy. Sparks hissed and danced in the dim glow of streetlights. Her opponent stood in the alley, silver-lit eyes gleaming, hands flexing as steel curled and twisted around him like living armor. Every movement radiated power. He had adapted fully to her previous tactics, predicting where she might teleport, anticipating portal placements. Claire smirked faintly, greenish-blue eyes glinting in the shadows. "All right," she muttered under her breath. "Time to raise the stakes." She leapt from the rooftop railing, disappearing midair, portal opening beneath her feet to reappear directly behind him. Steel twisted, shooting toward where she had been, but she teleported again, flipping through a portal above his head. Sparks erupted as rods collided against walls and each other, creating a symphony of chaos. The boy's grin was gone now. He was serious, focused, dangerous, and unyielding. "You've learned fast," he said, voice low and calculated. "But fast thinking isn't enough. Strength matters." "Strength is overrated," Claire shot back, spinning through a portal onto a nearby fire escape. "Precision, creativity, and style, that's what matters." Claire had been studying his movements, noticing small patterns, subtle tells in his posture, the exact timing of a coil before a swing, the way he redirected metal to anticipate attacks. She used her portals and teleportation not just to dodge, but to manipulate him, forcing missteps, overextensions, and exposure. She flicked a portal open beneath a steel rod, redirecting it into a wall just as he lunged. Teleport, portal, leap. Another portal opened midair, sending a spinning shard toward his shoulder. He twisted, barely deflecting it. Claire grinned through the adrenaline burn. "This is it, the dance I live for." Her muscles screamed as she darted through a series of rapid portals, flipping, ducking, weaving through steel. Sparks exploded as metal collided midair. She used a combination of vertical and lateral portals, making her position unpredictable. "Enough games," he shouted, silver aura flaring. A massive coil of steel twisted into a tornado, faster and sharper than anything she had faced yet. Claire's breath caught. This is serious. She blinked sideways, teleporting through one portal after another, each movement precise, each portal carefully chosen to redirect attacks. The steel tornado raged, but she used it against him, sending fragments spinning unpredictably, forcing him to adjust his own pattern. For the first time, Claire realized she could push the fight beyond just defense and misdirection. She could control it. She opened multiple portals, creating a lattice connecting rooftops, alley corners, and lampposts. Teleport, portal, teleport, portal. The boy's attacks began to falter, some missing their mark entirely. Claire had effectively turned the alley into her chessboard, every move forcing him into mistakes, stretching his stamina. Her grin widened. "Finally," she whispered. "Time for the finale." She blinked directly above him, opening a portal beneath her feet to vault into the air. Another portal opened in the alley behind him, redirecting a steel rod into his midsection. He staggered, twisting, silver-lit eyes flashing with surprise. Claire twisted through another portal, flipping onto a fire escape, then spun through a diagonal portal to strike from an angle he hadn't anticipated. He faltered again, just slightly, but it was enough. Claire had finally seized a tangible advantage. "Not bad," he admitted, breathing heavily. "You've adapted, faster than expected, stronger than I thought." Claire's grin widened despite exhaustion. "Told you," she said. "Play it my way or don't play at all." The alley was quiet for a heartbeat. Sparks danced in the shadows. Twisted steel lay scattered across the ground. Claire's greenish-blue eyes gleamed with exhilaration. She had outsmarted him, for now. But her muscles burned, her lungs ached, and she knew one more mistake could cost her. The boy flexed his fingers, steel coiling for another strike. Claire clenched her jaw, scanning every angle, every portal, every potential move. She was ready. The dance had reached its apex, and Claire Prattol had no intention of backing down. Chapter 11. Claire's boots hit the alley floor hard, chest heaving, greenish-blue eyes blazing with exhaustion and exhilaration. The twisted steel around her had settled, some rods bent, others lying harmlessly on cracked pavement. Sparks fizzled in the dim glow of the streetlights, and the faint hum of her lingering portals echoed softly. The boy across from her stumbled slightly, silver-lit eyes narrowing, steel slowly retracting into his hands. He was breathing hard, clearly drained, but still standing. You adapted, he admitted, voice low and ragged. Faster than I expected. Smarter than I imagined. Claire pushed back a strand of brown hair plastered to her forehead, smirking despite the ache in her muscles. Her hoodie was ripped in a few places, and sweat clung to her skin. Not bad yourself, she replied. But if we keep this up, one of us is going to get really hurt. He studied her for a long moment, then let out a low laugh, almost a sigh. Agreed. Claire's grin softened. She felt that familiar rush, thrill, danger, satisfaction, but also a creeping fatigue. Her teleportation and portals had pushed her to the edge. One more miscalculation, and she could have been badly hurt. They circled each other slowly, the remnants of battle scattered around them. Claire's green bow shifted crookedly, but her expression remained composed. She had won the tactical advantage, but this wasn't about defeating him completely. It was about testing herself, learning, pushing limits, and most importantly, surviving. I have to ask, the boy said finally, voice calm now. Why do you fight like that? Why use teleportation and portals like a dance? Claire tilted her head, considering the question. Because it's fun, she said finally. It's a challenge and it's me. I don't fight to hurt people, not really. I fight to test, to learn, to see what I can do. The boy's eyes softened slightly, but the silver light didn't fade entirely. You're different. Claire laughed, a low, tired sound. Yeah, I get that a lot. For a few moments, they simply watched each other, the city around them quiet in the aftermath. Claire allowed herself a small smile, stretching her sore muscles. She had done something incredible, pushed her teleportation and portals to levels she hadn't attempted before, and outsmarted a shifter who was stronger than she was. Her mind flicked to Westmore County, the city she had grown up in, the hidden shifters, the dyers, the danger that always lurked in the shadows. She'd come from outside the city with her parents, shifters themselves, and her mastery over teleportation and portals was something rare. Most shifters here weren't trained like her, weren't precise like her, weren't prepared for the creative chaos she could unleash. She shook off the thought. That was the past. Right now, this fight had proven something. Her abilities weren't just tricks. They were her tools, her weapons, her style. The boy straightened, steel retreating entirely. You're skilled, he said finally. I've underestimated you. Don't make the same mistake twice. Claire nodded, still catching her breath. I won't. With a flick of her wrist, she opened a portal beneath her feet and vanished, reappearing on the fire escape above the alley. She looked down at him one last time before disappearing entirely, leaving the alley in silence. Later, as she wandered through the quieter streets of Westmore County, Claire let herself reflect. The fight had been exhilarating, exhausting, and enlightening. She had tested her teleportation and portal mastery to the edge, survived, and come out stronger, not physically, but mentally and strategically. Her greenish-blue eyes scanned the shadows along the streets. She caught glimpses of the city's darker corners, where minor crimes sometimes flared and shifters moved quietly in hiding. She wasn't a hero, she reminded herself. She didn't see herself that way, but she liked seeing the world become just a little bit better, one calculated move at a time. A small smirk crossed her face. Not bad for a day's work, she whispered, tucking her hands into the pockets of her oversized hoodie. Her thoughts drifted to school, to the friends and classmates who had no idea about her abilities, to the excitement and curiosity that always drove her forward. She had barely scratched the surface of the world around her, barely seen the dangers and possibilities lurking in Westmore County. But Claire Prattol was ready. For the fights, the adventures, the games yet to come. And she knew one thing for certain. Teleportation, portals, and a little bit of cleverness could take her anywhere she wanted to go. Chapter 12. Claire Prattol swung her backpack over her shoulder as she pushed through the doors of East Westmore High, the familiar scent of polished floors and cafeteria lunch wafting up to greet her. Her greenish-blue eyes scanned the crowded hallways, catching glimpses of friends and classmates bustling between classes. She grinned faintly. tucking a loose strand of brown hair behind her ear, the green bow in her hair slightly askew after yesterday's escapades. The memory of the alley, the twisted steel, and the silver-lit eyes of the metal shifter still danced in her mind. Her muscles ached from the fight, and her hoodie bore new tears from the flurry of movement, yet her grin remained. There was something intoxicating about pushing her abilities to their limits, the thrill of teleportation and portal mastery combined in a dance of strategy and sheer audacity. She strolled down the hallway with her usual bounce, an extroverted presence that didn't seek attention but radiated it naturally. Friends waved, and she returned the gestures, threading her way through clusters of students. Every so often, her mind flicked to possibilities. A portal here, a quick teleport there. The world was full of corners to explore, secrets to uncover, and minor chaos to stir without anyone knowing her hand was in it. Her first class was history, and as she settled into her seat, she couldn't help but glance at the windows. The city outside, Westmore County, sprawled beneath her. A mixture of modern structures and older brick-lined streets. Alleys darkened with shadows and secrets. Shifters moved in hiding here, some concealing minor abilities, others mastering their powers in secrecy. Claire had grown up outside the city, trained by her parents, both shifters themselves, giving her a precision and mastery over teleportation and portals that most here would never achieve. As the teacher droned on about historical treaties and battles, Claire let her mind wander. She wasn't ignoring the lesson. She had to keep up grades to avoid suspicion. But the threads of curiosity pulled her attention elsewhere. What if she explored that narrow alley she had passed yesterday? Or that abandoned warehouse at the edge of the district? Places where a shifter could move freely without prying eyes. She scribbled in her notebook, half notes, half sketches of portal placements and potential teleportation strategies. One day, she mused, she could test them all. Not for combat necessarily, but for exploration. For fun. For learning how far she could push herself. Lunchtime rolled around, and Claire navigated the cafeteria with practiced ease. She grabbed a tray, piled high with whatever food was available, and found a table near the windows. The chatter of students filled the room, a comforting hum against which her thoughts danced. She pulled out her sketchpad, flipping to a fresh page. Drawings of portal schematics, angles of attack, and notes about recent battles filled the paper. Her fight with the metal shifter replayed in her mind. She could still feel the adrenaline, the sparks, the twist of steel. How close she had been to hitting her limits. Yet how exhilarating it had been to manipulate him, force mistakes, and take the upper hand through sheer cleverness. A faint laugh escaped her lips. Sometimes she wondered if anyone else could feel that kind of joy in a fight, without malice, without cruelty. She wasn't a hero. She didn't see herself that way. But the thrill of testing herself, of proving her mastery, was undeniable. Mid-bite, Claire caught movement out of the corner of her eye. A flicker of something unusual. She froze, scanning subtly, greenish-blue eyes narrowing. Across the cafeteria, a student she hadn't noticed before lingered near a group, hands moving in a way that suggested more than normal fidgeting. Metal? Energy? Some shifter ability cloaked in casual motion? Claire's pulse quickened. Her instincts hummed, familiar and precise. This wasn't a threat, at least not yet, but curiosity tugged. She stood, adjusting her oversized hoodie, and drifted closer. Her extroverted nature allowed her to move casually, blending into the crowd without drawing attention. "Hey," she said lightly, striking up conversation with a nearby student. "Did you see the new library expansion? Heard there's some weird artifact they brought in." Her comment was a casual hook, a way to steer the conversation and observe the newcomer's reactions without revealing her own interest. The student's eyes flicked toward the person she had noticed, a slight tension in their posture. Claire smirked faintly. Someone hiding something. After lunch, she wandered the hallways, letting her curiosity guide her. Her mind cataloged every potential corner, every shadowed alcove. She slipped into a side hallway near the gym, abandoned at this hour, and paused. A faint hum of energy brushed her senses. Claire tilted her head, green bow glinting under the fluorescent lights. Portals. Small, subtle. Someone had been experimenting, likely a shifter in hiding like herself. A grin tugged at her lips. She had to investigate. She stepped lightly, careful not to reveal herself. A portal flickered open and she disappeared, reappearing quietly behind the corner. There, a small figure tinkered with a device she couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't dangerous. Not yet, but it was fascinating. Curious, she murmured, her voice low. Just like me. The figure froze, silver blue energy crackling faintly around their fingers. Claire's heart leapt with excitement. Another shifter. Hidden, experimenting, cautious. She had stumbled onto something she probably shouldn't, but she couldn't resist. Hey, Claire said, smiling, hands raised in casual peace. You're not supposed to be here either, huh? The figure blinked, then nodded slowly. No, but I didn't think anyone else knew. Not really. Claire's grin widened. Well, you found me. Lucky you. The two exchanged cautious, curious glances. Claire's extroverted energy filled the small space, not threatening, not demanding, but impossible to ignore. I'm Claire, she said. And you? The figure hesitated, then whispered their name. Claire tucked it away, another thread in the tangled web of hidden shifters in Westmore County. Later that afternoon, Claire returned home, muscles aching, hoodie even more torn, but spirits high. Her parents, both shifters who had trained her in teleportation and portal mastery from outside the city, smiled knowingly as she recounted fragments of the day. You've been pushing yourself again, her father said, brow raised. Claire shrugged, green bow crooked, grin wide. I'm learning, testing limits, seeing what's out there. Her mother chuckled. Just be careful. There are stronger shifters than you've met. And the Dyers, they watch, even if you don't see them. Claire's grin didn't fade. I know, that's part of the fun. Her parents exchanged a glance, understanding both pride and concern. Claire Prattol had grown up outside Westmore County, trained with precision, creativity, and daring. Her mastery over teleportation and portals was rare, something few shifters in hiding here could match. She was clever, playful, reckless in controlled doses, and utterly confident in her abilities. And yet the city hummed with unseen threats. That evening, Claire wandered the rooftops, greenish-blue eyes scanning the city below. Sparks of light flickered in alleys, shadowed movements hinted at hidden shifters. Minor crimes, experiments, games of power, threads weaving together across the city. She grinned, bow catching the moonlight. Teleportation, portals, and a sharp mind would take her far. Her pulse thrummed with excitement. The city was alive with possibilities, challenges, and secrets, and Claire Prattol intended to explore every one of them, recklessly, cleverly, and with undeniable style. For this was only part one of her story. And the world was waiting. Chapter 13. Claire Prattol pushed open the rusty gate of the old Westmore playground, green bow slightly askew, hoodie sleeves tugged over her hands. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt and faded swings. Her pulse thrummed, not from running, but from the possibilities that always stretched before her. The alley fights, the rooftop sprints, the subtle encounters with hidden shifters, they had all taught her something. She had learned her limits, pushed her abilities further than ever, and begun to feel the pulse of the city beneath her feet. Teleportation, portals, and a sharp mind had become extensions of her body. Every leap, every flick of a wrist, every careful placement of a portal carried the elegance of precision and the thrill of daring. Claire loved it. From a nearby rooftop, she spotted movement. A small group of students had gathered, and one of them was fiddling with an unfamiliar device. Metal rods jutted from it, tiny sparks flying as it hummed. Claire's greenish-blue eyes narrowed. Another shifter, probably experimenting. She grinned. Extrovert enough to approach without hesitation, cautious enough to keep her distance. Hey, she called, voice carrying lightly across the playground. Having fun with whatever that is? The figure jumped, spinning around. Sparks flickered in panic, energy brushing her periphery. Claire's grin didn't falter. Relax, she said. I'm Claire. You're not causing trouble, right? The figure hesitated, silver blue energy dimming slightly. I don't think so. Just experimenting. Claire's grin widened. She ducked down behind a swing for cover, then opened a small portal, peeking through to observe. This wasn't a fight, yet, but it was curiosity, her favorite game. Later that day, Claire walked the streets, hopping rooftops, letting teleportation carry her from shadowed alley to sunlit terrace. Every corner of Westmore County held secrets, minor crimes, hidden shifters, whispers of the Dyers whose real identities and abilities remained a mystery. The city thrummed with life and danger, a puzzle she was only beginning to solve. Claire paused atop a fire escape, greenish-blue eyes scanning the horizon. She imagined portals connecting every rooftop, alleys as playgrounds, dangers as challenges to overcome, not for glory, but for the thrill of the game. She flicked a wrist, teleporting across the street, letting the motion carry her through a cascading sequence of portals along walls, fences, and lampposts. Each movement precise, creative, daring. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from joy. The memories of the multi-chapter fight with the metal shifter lingered. The alley, the sparks, the twisting steel. It had been a challenge she relished, a dance of strategy, teleportation, and portals. She had pushed herself, tested her limits, and survived. And yet, she knew this was only the beginning. Stronger shifters existed. Hidden dangers lurked. The Dyers remained an ominous presence, powerful, unknown, and terrifying. Claire smirked faintly, adjusting her green bow. She wasn't afraid. Not really. The thrill of discovery, the joy of using her abilities creatively, and the exhilaration of testing herself made her pulse quicken. That evening, she returned home, hoodie tattered, muscles aching, but spirit high. Her parents greeted her with a knowing glance, having trained her in teleportation and portals since outside the city. "You're pushing too hard," her mother said softly. "Maybe," Claire admitted, flopping onto the couch. "But I'm learning. I'm seeing the city in a way I never have before." Her father chuckled. "And what have you learned?" Claire's greenish-blue eyes sparkled. "That there's more out there than I can even imagine. Minor shifters hiding, people doing small crimes, experiments, and maybe some bigger things. The city is alive." Her parents exchanged a look, pride and concern mingling. Claire Prattol had grown up outside Westmore County, trained with precision and daring. Her mastery of teleportation and portals made her rare, capable, clever, and bold. The next day at school, Claire's curiosity couldn't be contained. She darted between classes, notes in hand, sketching potential portal networks across campus. Her extroverted energy drew occasional glances from friends, but she didn't seek attention. She simply moved with purpose, a natural presence impossible to ignore. During lunch, she noticed subtle disturbances. A student who lingered too long near the supply closet, another with faint, flickering energy at their fingertips. Claire smirked. Miniature mysteries, harmless yet intriguing. Each one a thread she might follow later, her playful nature insisting she peek where she perhaps shouldn't. Teleportation allowed her to move unseen. Portals made even the most locked corners accessible. She experimented, tested, explored, all without anyone realizing the extent of her abilities. By evening, Claire was perched atop the tallest roof she could find, greenish-blue eyes catching the last light of the sun. The city stretched out before her, alive with possibility. Minor shifters moved in hiding. Subtle crimes flickered through alleyways, and somewhere in the shadows, the Dyers waited. Her pulse thrummed with excitement. She wasn't a hero, she reminded herself. She didn't see herself that way. But the world was full of challenges, games, and mysteries, and Claire Prattol intended to explore every corner, push every limit, and leap through every portal she could open. She adjusted her green bow, inhaled deeply, and whispered to the city below, "Let's see what you've got." With a flick of her wrist, she vanished, teleporting into the horizon, leaving only a faint shimmer of her last portal behind. Part 1 was over, but the story was just beginning. Thanks for listening. Stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next story.